My name is Jake Holdaway. I am a citizen. For my profession, for the last 17 years, I've heard governments argue and fight with the National Association of Counties and the National League of Cities. It's an organization that brings together the best minds to fix different county and city problems. So I felt when I got to get into this, I was blessed to have that background. I'm also the great-grandson of a man named Shadrach Holdaway. Not going to get emotional, and I don't share this family information lightly, but I do share it because it helps you understand why I know so much about the lake. Shadrach Holdaway was born in Nauvoo, Illinois, and 3 months before Joseph Smith died, he was a member of the Mormon Battalion. He went to San Diego, got some gold, and he's the first Mormon documented to pay his tithing in gold. The church needed a loan to get people across the plains, and Shadrach stepped up. And through that loan, Shadrach was entrusted with a lot of land that was on Utah Lake. He was a pioneer. I live in his homestead home, and I have the ability to carry his shoulders. And I think about it a lot. His son, Amos Holdaway, this is about 50 years before the United States came in, Shadrach, was selected. And you got to understand, this is the territory of Mexico. We're not here in the United States yet for 50 years. Amos was selected as one of the first county commissioners of Utah County. He was not voted in, he was appointed by the prophet Brigham Young. His job was to be the visionary to set out the course for the waterways of this valley. So he had to think and plan hundreds of years in advance and say, what is this valley going to look like? Who's going to come? Obviously, in Mormon doctrine, they believed a lot of people would come. And it has come to fruition. That pipe was built first by wood, not by the green pipe you're seeing in this picture. And that pipe serviced many different farmers. They brought out water shares and they divided it into different canals. And his son, Walter, one of the first stake presidents of Orem, took over the property that is now the Holdaway family property, where now stands Sleepy Ridge Golf Course. His son, Robert, my grandfather, just recently passed away with his wife, Kamora. And so, a couple years before they were going to die, I engaged them about what we were going to do with our wetland property and started to dream out what should happen. Now, when I was a kid, I remember Utah Lake as open and short green grass. And I would sit on the tractor with my grandfather, Robert, and he would tell me everything about the history of who I was. I would know about Shadrach and meeting with the tribes when they came in here with Brigham Young. And I would find out they lived on the shore of Utah Lake. And I learned about grinding stones, and I learned about wiki-ups, and I learned about arrowheads. And I would always go down to Utah Lake and I would find them. And I was always shocked that nobody knew this history. I was always shocked that, hey, wiki-ups were always built here. And it was open access when I was a kid. There weren't any problems. I read a newspaper article one time, and I decided to get engaged and kind of find out about it. This is the same picture in the same spot. Now, one of the things you need to understand about the history, and I'm not talking about the lake, I'm going to be talking about the lake shore, the shoreline. For hundreds and hundreds of years, Utah Lake was the source of food for all of the buffalo, deer, and the elk. That's where all the herds were. That's why the Indian tribes came to hunt here, right? And when my ancestors came in and brought water we took all of this sagebrush desert and we turned it into this green valley where the herds didn't have to come back to. They didn't have to go down to the water line to be able to eat in the wetlands. They came up and they were able to eat so many things. And the herds went away. Now those were taken over by dairy farmers in Vineyard, Orem, Provo, and along the lakeshore. And so at that time, they put up barbed wire, and the lakeshore still maintained clean. The grasses would be eaten and it would stay short. There was a litigation problem with the state of Utah. Going back, and you have to understand why, the Holdaways were here 50 years before the United States government was here. So, who owns the land, right? And then when it came, Amos was the first county commissioner. So there weren't really property lines, and the lake fluctuate in height, right? And so I knew these things, I knew why, and I knew the litigation that went over for 30 or 40 years. So when I started to navigate, is this an ownership process, or is this a stewardship? My family's had the stewardship of this property for a long time. And sometimes when you're an owner, you're not a great steward. Does that make sense? There's a separation there. So I started to recognize what public access or things we needed to protect. I wanted to protect the eagles. I wanted to protect the fishing and the hunting. I wanted to fit, I also noticed that when that litigation happened, all of the hoofed animals were removed. So we're not going to have any buffalo, we're not going to have any deer, we're not going to have any elk come back at the levels that we need to maintain a healthy ecosystem. They're just not going to come back. The dairy farmers went bankrupt around between 1998 and 2003. They all went bankrupt. So there's no hoofed animals to send down there to have a natural grooming. So when it started to happen, I just started to notice this massive forest grow up around the lake. And I kept saying to myself, like, when are we going to bring a herd to naturally clean through this? And so there's also a fire problem that would go through the lake as well. I also wanted to make sure we recognize the ancestral land, that we're only stewards and we've only been here for a very short amount of time. I also knew of the state's desire to put in a 50-year bike trail through this private property. And there's a lot of different private property owners, not just my family, but others. And so how do we help and go through that? And so we went through and we learned about grazing. These are pictures from Ogden Bay, what happens when there's a grazing process. And I also, when I dreamed up, my great-grandfather Walter, he was the visionary to be able to say, hey, in the 1940s and 50s, he said, look, we need to save land for Sierra Shell. We need to have a public setup to be able to do that. And I know that my grandfather Walter didn't think about Colin Ray concerts that are going on right now, right? But he did think about setting forth land for future generations. And he did think about the public trust. And so with that process, that's where I started the Walkara Way process. It's just saying, how can we gobble up all of this wetlands to be able to protect it? And I went to every government entity. Like I said, there's 25 government entities that touch the property. Being the Utah Lake Commission at the head, Eric Ellis has been fantastic in understanding and learning it. He's setting up meetings. He's actually the head. I'm not. I kind of attended the meetings and I pushed for it and cheerleaded it, and I said, hey, let's donate this land for public access. So the plan is to, number one, identify the 1,000 acres. And I want to point out, because we're in a really good spot, stop looking at the power slide and just look out the window and say, from right over there to the bay, where the Ogden Bay, passing over our farm, which is that green field right over there, and then going 3 power lines over, there's 1,000 acres, and it goes between 1,000 and 650 acres. And so that's the property, and being able to go through and have stop the dropping of chemicals, stop the drop. We've been dropping millions of dollars of pesticides and of herbicides to just kill everything. And I know that for thousands of years, herds moved and they kind of cleaned it out. And so this is an effort to have it go through the stomach of a hoofed animal to reduce the nitrogen content of it. This is what it's today. On the left-hand side is no Walkara Way. It's 15-foot tall Phragmites. On the right-hand side, it's gone. The problem is gone. The mosquitoes are not there at all as well, and it's been a clean process. So every lake in the state of Utah has a grazing program connected to it. The only lake that doesn't is Utah Lake. So reintroducing that, fixing my great-grandfather's field drains of how they flow to be able to use them to bring back ducks and geese, holding governments accountable and saying, we want eagles' nests. Where do we want them? How can we rehabilitate them and put them in? Introducing public access points so that we can have people come in and engage the property to be able, and connecting where that is. And the last thing is I want to thank my grandma. And my grandma passed away last August, a year ago. She's the only one that believed in my dream. And one of the things that I like about this symposium is that my great-grandfather, Amos, did not put the pipe all by himself. He had thousands of people working to do that. And when we think about Utah Lake, Jake Holdaway, Eric Ellis, Brammer, there's a lot of people, but it takes more than just 3. And I would just say that, like, each one of you guys that are in the room, you have an expertise. It might be trails, like Bike Walk Provo, or it might be sight bird watching. That I don't have that expertise, and maybe the government entity doesn't. Don't think that you're insignificant. Dream, and then be a part of the solution. And our plan has gotten better year over year by engaging in others and saying, hey, we need to think about 100 years down the road. So with that, thanks guys, and we're excited about it. And the last thing I'll say is, if you're not already a friend of the Walkara Way Facebook group, you can become a friend of it. And next week I'll post a tour where you can come and walk through the 50-acre pilot, and we'll be able to demonstrate and show you, look at all the ducks, look at all the geese, look at where they don't engage, because they don't engage where the Phragmites is. Look at how much have come back. We've had 2 eagles already nest this year, something we haven't seen in 30 years. So come in and take a tour, and we're happy to show you what that's all about. So thanks, guys.